Hello, today we're going to talk about equations in the form of x squared is equal to k. So the first thing that we need to review is that the inverse operation of squaring is the square root. And if x squared is equal to k, then x will be equal to 0 when k is equal to 0. X will be equal to plus or minus the square root of k when k is greater than 0. And there is not going to be any real solutions when k is less than 0. So let's solve these four equations in these examples. So number one, in order to solve this first equation, we will want to add 4 to both sides. So we will end up getting 3x squared is equal to 9. And then we will need to divide both sides by 3, which will leave us with x squared is equal to 3. And then last but not least, we will want to take the square root of both sides, which means that x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 3. All right. Example number 2, the first thing we will need to do is to subtract 8 on both sides. So that will leave us with a negative 4h squared is equal to 16. And then we would divide both sides by negative 4. So we will get h squared is equal to a negative 4. And if we take the square root, we know we cannot take the square root of a negative number. Okay, we know we cannot take the square root of a negative number there because k would be, in that case, remember it says that x squared is equal to k, and it says there is no real solutions when k is less than 0. So if we have h squared is equal to a negative 4, then that means k is negative 4. So there will be no real solution. You cannot take the square root of a negative number. All right. Number 3, the first thing we need to do, if the m is on the left side but it's inside the parentheses, we need to get rid of whatever is on the outside of the parentheses, which is that square. So we need to take the square root of both sides, and that will leave with m minus 9 is equal to plus or minus 5. And then we will add 9 on both sides, so m would be equal to 9 plus or minus 5, which means that m would either be 14 or m would be equal to 4. All right. Number 4, it says first thing we need to get rid of is whatever's on the outside of the parentheses. So you would need to get rid of the multiplying by 3 first. You can't get rid of the square first because the 3 is not being squared. So we would divide both sides by 3, which would give us p plus 6 squared is equal to 7. And then we would take the square root of both sides. And that will give us p plus 6 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 7. And then we would subtract 6. So we would get p is equal to a negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 7. All right, so for number 5, we're going to have to take the cube root of both sides, and we will end up getting that x is equal to, if you go in the calculator, you can take the cube root by going to, if you look, you don't see the cube root on the calculator, but you can click math, and then you can go down to the number 4, that's the cube root. You can type in negative 64, and it will give you negative 4. All right, so negative 4 is your answer. Number 6, the first thing we need to do is add 7 to both sides. So we will have y to the 4th is equal to 26. And then we will need to take the 4th root of both sides. If I click math, you notice you don't see the 4th root. However, you do see on number 5, you see an x root. So if you click that button, it will give you a blank so you can just type in what root you want to take. And then we put of 26. And as you can see here, we get a decimal. So you could say in 3C Fig 2.26. However, I'm just going to leave it as the unrounded answer. So that means y will be equal to plus or minus the 4th root of 26. And don't want to forget that plus minus. All right, so that is my answer there. Number 7. First thing you would look and see, k is on the inside of the parentheses. You have it raised to the 5th power. So we want to take the 5th root. And we get k plus 8 is equal to the 5th root of 13, because it's going to give me a decimal. Math. As you can see, so I left it as the exact answer. I need to subtract 8 on both sides, so that's going to be k is equal to negative 8 plus the square root of, or excuse me, the 5th root of 13. Number 8, we have w to the negative 3rd power is equal to negative 1 over 27. So the first thing that I would suggest is to rewrite the left side, because you have a negative exponent and we're not used to that. So you can rewrite that as 1 over w to the 3rd power is equal to negative 1 over 27. And then what I would do is I would cross multiply. And if you were to cross multiply, you would do 1 times 27 is equal to w to the 3rd power times negative 1, which is negative w to the 3rd power. And then what I would do is I would divide both sides by negative 1. So it will end up having negative 27 is equal to w cubed. And then what I would do is, and I'm going to rewrite the problem up here, I would take the cube root on both sides, and I would end up getting w is equal to the cube root of negative 27 is negative 3. And number 9, we will need to rewrite. That'll be 1 over q to the power 4 is equal to 256. And then we will multiply both sides by q to the 4. So that'll be 1 is equal to 256 times q to the fourth. Then what I would do is I would divide both sides by 256. So that'd be q to the 4 is equal to 1 over 256. And then I would take this the fourth root of that. And I would get 1 over 4. And remember, it's going to be plus or minus 1 over 4. Make sure I put that we took the fourth root. All right. So now let's look at equations in factored form. So an equation that is written in factored form is an equation is written in factored form if one side of the equation is set equal to 0. Okay, it has to be set equal to 0. Okay, and it has to be fully factored. Factored means it needs to be written like multiplication. So when solving an equation that is in factored form, we can apply the zero product property. Okay, and that states that if two numbers multiply to equal 0, one of the numbers have to be 0, or both of them can be 0. So if we look at these two examples, we have 4u times u plus 7 is equal to 0. So I have two things being multiplied. I have 4u, and then I have u plus 7. So this whole thing will be 0 as long as one of those equals 0. So you have to find what will make each factor 0. So 4u is equal to 0, and then we have u plus 7 is equal to 0. So if we have 4u is equal to 0, that means u is going to be equal to 0, because you have to divide both sides by 4, and 0 divided by 4 is 0. And then on the second one, we will have to subtract 7 on both sides, which means u will be equal to negative 7. So here you have two solutions, 0 and negative 7. All right. For the last example, 11, it has 9c minus 5 times c plus 8 is equal to 0. So we will have two equations. 9c minus 5 is equal to 0. And then we'll have c plus 8 is equal to 0. So the first thing we will do is add 5 to both sides in the first equation. And then we will divide by 9. So that c is equal to 5 over 9. The second equation, we will subtract 8 on both sides. So that c is equal to negative 8. So those are my two solutions there. If you have any questions, please contact your teacher. Have a great day.